Being an MSL, medical science liaison, is becoming a really viable career path for PAs and NPs. I've already made two videos about being an MSL, but those videos were focused on people who are pharmaceutical MSLs. But I recently learned that there are also MSLs for medical devices. I knew about device reps, but I didn't know that there was actually an MSL for devices as well. So you may be asking, what is the difference? Why would I want to choose device over pharmaceutical or vice versa? Well, that's what we're going to talk about in today's video. So stay tuned to learn about this different option for an MSL. Kirsten, you are somebody who worked as a PA and then transitioned into an MSL role. How long were you a practicing PA, like practicing clinical?
So I was a PA for about 9 years before I made the transition to get my DMSC degree and then moved into pharmaceutical and device industries.
Did you feel that you needed that DMSC to be able to move into MSL role? Or have you seen other people that do it that don't have that doctorate?
I absolutely see people that don't have the doctorate do it. So it is possible, but I will tell you it's much harder. I think this last statistic I saw was about 90% of MSLs have their doctorate. Again, not everyone knows what a PA does, but everybody knows what a doctorate is. So it significantly helped me.
Okay. So when you made that transition, what kind of role did you come into in the MSL world?
So my first role was actually with a device company that focused on AFib. They're a wonderful, wonderful company. Loved my job. So I worked for them for about a year. Device, though, does have its differences, and I covered a very large territory. It was about half the country. Sometimes I was flying across the whole country. So a job did come up in a pharmaceutical industry field, and it is just the state of Michigan. So it's just a much better fit for my life and work-life balance.
So what are some of the differences besides territory?
A few things that I noticed, and again, I don't know if every company has this, but from my PA friends in device, it seems to be the case. There are less rules in device. I don't think that they're as strict at times. So some of those compliance rules, some of the rules around not interacting with the commercial team that you have in pharmaceutical, I didn't have as much of that in device. The territories, again, in device tend to be bigger, not always, but it's not unusual for a device MSL to cover half the country or a whole country, whereas pharmaceutical maybe covers 1 to 3 states on average, I would say. Another thing to keep in mind with device is that a lot of them are used in the OR. So your meetings may be in the OR, you may be spending time in cases, because to fully understand that device, you have to see how it's used in every step. So expect that that's part of the job, in addition to also understanding the pre and post-op process. That part you don't see in pharmaceuticals. In device, you not only have to understand the device itself, but what does a patient need to go through pre-op and how do you take care of them post-op?
Yeah. I know in some of the MSLs that I've interviewed that, the PAs that moved into MSL role in the pharmaceutical side, some kind of said you had to be an expert in that area that of the pharmaceutical you're working, and other ones like, no, not really, because they're going to train you. You just really need to be able to be somebody who can absorb the science. But what about in that device role? Do you need to be familiar with the devices that you're going to be repping? Or, well, let me back up first, even the title. So when you work in devices, are you considered an MSL or are you considered a rep, or are there other terminologies that mean the same thing that they use in the device world?
So there's definitely different terminologies. You are not considered a rep though. So if you're on the medical or the professional team, you're still not selling that device.
Oh,
There are PAs that do that, but that's a whole different area in the
oh,
commercial side. But they do use different titles. So some device companies do say medical science liaison. My original title was clinical liaison manager when I came into device, but I did a very similar role. You'll see roles that are more in education or professional education. And a lot of times you'll see different titles than MSL in the device field. So you want to look at the job description and you'll start to see, okay, this is sounding a lot like MSL.
what I was asking earlier is that, about being an expert, do you have to know the device that you're going to be an MSL for? Like, do you have to have experience with it before you use it, or are they going to train you on that particular device?
So they will train you. Now, if you are a PA and you're working in the OR with that device day in and day out, you're probably going to have a better chance at getting the job. The company I went to, I had never used the devices, never been in the OR with it. but I had experience in cardiology, working in pre-op and working post-op, including ICU type floors. So that's what got me the in for that job. But I was not in the OR regularly, and I did not work with the devices regularly.
So it sounds to me that if you're somebody who loves to be, especially in the operating room, and you love the whole hands-on physical use of a product and talking about, something and interacting with surgeons a lot, and you don't care about that you're covering a big territory and be traveling more, that might be a better route for you. Whereas the pharmaceutical side for MSL is going to be a lot more, not as hands-on. You're going to probably be more talking and discussing about the science behind things in papers
Yes.
and things like that. Not that you don't have to understand the science with a device rep, but
Yeah.
it seems like
You,
one's more cerebral, one's more hands-on.
yes. And you definitely, as a device, MSL or whatever the company calls it, you still will never touch a patient. So even if you are a surgery PA, if you're in the OR, you are never touching a patient. But you do get to see the process through from pre-op during surgery, and you get to see the results, which is kind of cool. Whereas pharmaceutical, you get more of like maybe I meet with a healthcare provider and they tell me about all their patients they're treating with a certain drug. So you do get feedback, it's just not as immediate.
And so other than the territory, which one did you prefer?
So I personally prefer pharmaceutical. Again, my first company, I love them, but I didn't come from a surgical background. So
Okay.
that just wasn't as good of a fit, I think, for me. Coming from clinical practice, especially internal medicine, we didn't do as many procedures. It was more about drugs and treatment. So I think it's just a better fit for me.
Well, it's good to know that there are different options in the MSL world because I think most people just hear MSL and they think, oh, drugs and stuff. So to know that if that interests you, that there is the whole device side as well that you can
Yes.
be involved with.
Yes, and I will say device tends to be very friendly to PAs because PAs are so prevalent in surgical areas. So you'll see a lot of PAs working for device companies, and sometimes it's not an MSL role, sometimes it's more of an educational role or whatever it may be. So I think it's a great place for surgical PAs to look if they're looking for a job transition.
Thank you so much, Kirsten, for sharing that information with us.
Yeah, absolutely.
If you're watching this and you're not really sure what an MSL does or how a PA or NP becomes an MSL, you can watch these videos here. Thanks for watching. As always, take care, stay sane, and I'll see you next time on the Medicine Couch. Bye.